We are continuing Ashur Charuch Orach Chaim Hilchot Shabbat. We are discussing the halachot of Havdalah and starting Siman Resh Tzadi Zayin today. The halachot of Besamim for Havdalah and Motzei Shabbat. Maran writes, Mevarech al ha-Besamim im yeshlo. You say bracha of Besamim if you have good smelling species available. Im yesh lo besamim ve'im ein lo ein tzarich lachazer acharehem. Unlike wine and the candle, you don't have to necessarily go out of your way to find besamim. If you have them, you say besamim. If you don't have them, that is fine. Also, and Mishna Berura writes to that, v'habracha hu borem minei besamim. So the bracha that he says borem minei besamim al eze min shehu. On regular weekday, you say the bracha that is necessary for every type of besamim, specific the bracha that it deserves. Over here, the hainu ala se besamim borase besamim on hadassim and things that are from trees, you say borase besamim. On vegetation that are good smelling, you say boreis besamim. And you have other brachot as well, as we discussed this already earlier on in Siman Resh Tetzayin. Says the Mishna Berura, Mikol makom bemotzei Shabbat marchin ala kol borei minei besamim. On Motzei Shabbat you say borei minei besamim on everything. Why? Kedei shelo yavou lit'ot ha'amonam, in order that people, the laymen, should not make a mistake. Because not everyone is proficient in the halachot of which one is borei aseh besamim, which one is borei minei besamim, which one is borei ispeh besamim. Not everyone is expert, and therefore they may make a mistake that would create halachic issues, but borei minei besamim covers everything b'di'evet. So therefore, this way you are safe, says the Mishna Berura. Aval bibracha zu yotze ala kol. This covers everything. וכמו שכתוב שם בסעיף מכל מקום לכתחילה טוב יותר שיקח לבשמים דבר שברכתו בורא מיני סמים. לכתחילה you should take something that is בורא מיני בסמים to begin with, and say the bracha כגון המוסק שקורין פיזם. There is a besamim that is dried from a body of a certain type of deer, which is considered a very highly professional and expensive thing right today, perfume nowadays. So musk or musk, it will be the best, because that is actually borei minei besamim. But says the Mishna Berura, there are others that let's say tziporin, the one, the cloves that many use, also is considered borei minei besamim according to some of the poskim as well. And says the Mishna Berura, therefore perhaps it's best to use one of those items that are either for sure borei minei besamim, or at least a safek of maybe being borei minei besamim, and therefore you could use them with no worries and no problems. But says the Mishna Berura, whatever you have, you will end up saying borei minei besamim. Now, as far as the Sephardi poskim are concerned, this is not necessarily a correct minhag. It is a minhag of the Ashkenazim that the Mishna Berura brings, but by us has been the minhag that we are very much used to besamim. People everyone knows that on Hadas you say Yaseh besamim, and on Nana you say borei ispeh besamim, and so on and so forth. People know, and we're not concerned that people are going to make that type of mistakes. Therefore, we do not follow this psak of saying borei minei besamim on everything. It depends on what you have, and even tziporin we say the cloths we say borei aseh besamim on them as well. Now, we discussed this already before, Ish Charuch, in Siman Resh Tetzayin Seif Bet, that cloths, the tziporin, the item that the Mishna Berura brings over here, the bracha for it would be noten reach tov b'perot, because it's edible. It's a food item. That's what the Shulchan Aruch seems to say over there. We say the bracha hanoten reach tov b'perot, because it's a peri. It's something that you use for food items, and the Mishna Berura discusses this as well. The Or Letzion, Chacham Ben Zion Abba Shaul, we discussed back then, that he says that nowadays that the tziporen is not necessarily made for that much usage of additives and food items. A lot of people use it for besamim. Therefore, you should say borase besamim on it in that case, even according to Maran, right? Now, because it is a safek, some people say boramin besamim on it because of that safek, which is what the Mishna Berura was referring to. But Lamase, the minhag of the Sfaradim has evolved that we say borase besamim on tziporen, and interestingly enough, some of the Yemenites, they have a minhag to say bore ispe besamim on tziporens. That gets into a whole different realm of discussion, but it adds to the understanding of why some people say bore besamim on gloves, and that it is fine as well. Again, we follow our minhag to say bore besamim on Sipora, and that's what Chacham Obadia paskins as well in Chazon Obadia, in Brachot, in Chelek of Brachot, that we say Boreh Aseh Besamim, and so is the psak of the Ben Ish Chai as well in Parashat Va'etchanan in Seif Vav. So that's as far as our minhag versus the Ashkenazim. Now the Shulchan Aruch says in Seif Bet, En mevarachin al besamim shel bet hakiseh va'al shel metim, hanetunim lemala mimitato shel met, velo al besamim shebemesibot ovdei kochavim, destam mesibatan la'avodat kochavim. There are two other items that, though being besamim, they are perfumes, they are things that are smelling amazing, and still it's asur to say bracha on them, using them for Havdalah. One is obviously for Avodah Zarah, because you cannot have any hana'ah from Tashmishei Avodah Zarah, but also any item that it is there not to smell good but to take away a bad smell is also considered not something that you could say besamim on. So back in the day, instead of having a spray in the bathroom, or having the electric things that we have nowadays, the fancier deodorants, back then they used besamim as deodorants. They would deodor, so to speak, the place, in the bet hakiseh, in the bathroom, they would put besamim. Or when you had a funeral, in order for the bad odor of the corpse not to disturb people, they would carry the coffin with besamim on it. This way, it would kind of like offset the bad odor that would be emanating from a corpse, perhaps potentially. And those besamim you cannot use as besamim for Havdalah. The kol zeh lav lerecha avidi, says the Chafetz Chaim, is not made for smelling good. It's just la'avur reach hasirachon. It's coming to offset a bad odor. So therefore, you can't say the bracha of besamim on them. And as far as the ones that are used in the parties of Ovdei Kochavim, and when they're sitting around, partying and eating and drinking, that is what they used to do. They would be mekater, they would bring besamim in the kavod of Avodah Zarah, and therefore it would be a problem. Now, if they're not partying, if they're just house of a person that happens to be on the side of Avodah Zarah, and he happens to also have some besamim in his house, some mosque in his house, that doesn't mean that's a tekrovet Avodah Zarah, that you could use. But what they put out in their parties, that is made for the kavod of Avodah Zarah, hence should not be used for for besamim of havdalah. Now, the Shulchan Aruch says in the Ramah over here adds to the words of Maran. The Ramah says the berach al besamim elu lo yatsa. If you did end up saying a bracha on these besamim, that bracha is not valid, and you would have to go back and say bracha on different besamim that are halachically proper. So that is the Ramah saying that even b'di'evid, it's not going to work if you say the bracha on those items that are not mutar. Now, Maran writes in Seif Gimal, sakim meleim besamim. If you have bags full of besamim, shemesimim ha'elam Yehudim toch kankanei hayayin, that they would put it inside in a mesh. They would put it in a mesh inside the barrels of wine as they are fermenting the wine, or afterwards, in order to give a good taste and smell to the, like nowadays they have like different casks. It's the oak cask. It's like, and for the Scotch they have the sherry casks. And depending on if it's a new cask, if it's an old cask, sometimes you see it's advertised that it was matured in a brand new oak cask. Why is that important? Because it gives it the oaky taste and smell, and people like that, right? Whereas if you already have used them and they are soaked with wine already, the second time you mature wine in it, it's not going to really have that same effect. So hence, it's a whole business of wineries, but this is what they used to do in the time of Chazal as well. They would have a mesh, and they would actually soak different items inside of it, of besamim, to give it a taste and smell that is more appealing. So that besamim that you bring out after you matured the wine, after you're done with it, now can you use that as besamim if it still smells good? It's the wine of the goyim. Wine of the goyim is asur, perhaps b'hana'ah. So says the Shulchan Aruch, even though that is mutar to smell them, it's not asur, because not asur b'hana'ah, right? It's not takrovet avodah zarah. This has been used in stam yinam. It's not asur b'hana'ah, but says the Shulchan Aruch, ein mavdilin aleim. We don't use them for havdalah. Is not kavod of the mitzvah. Now this applies also to a wine that has been left open. If you leave your wine open overnight, even though that nowadays we don't have nechashim, we don't have snakes roaming around, and therefore we're not worried that there's venom inside and it's going to be a problem of health problems and sakana, so you could drink it during the Suda, but you can't say Kiddush because it's not kavod for Kiddush that the wine was. There's a very similar idea over here as well, that you could smell it because the wine doesn't really give it taste in a way that it would be asur b'hana'ah, right? So it's not really a hana'ah from the wine altogether. Even if the wine was considered yain nesech, that would become asur b'hana'ah or stam yinam. Again, stam yinam is machloket in Yoredah Siman Kuf Chaf Dalit between Maran and Ramah, and surprisingly, Sfaradim actually are more machmir. So this explains the Maran Shulchan Aruch over here, because Maran holds that even stam yinam is asur b'hana'ah lechatchila. So that the Ramah says also lechatchila it should be machmir. With the Yevet, the Ashkenazim are more mekel on a regular stam yinam. This actually happens to be very timely, end of year, beginning of the year. Many people, because of the New Year and the holidays and so on, they give to their customers or to their vendors and colleagues different cases of wine and bottles of wine and whatnot. It creates a question that these non-kosher items are they asur b'hana'ah or is it only asur b'shtiya? Can I gift it to another Gentile one of my workers, or can I not, because that's considered hana? Again, that's a different discussion for a different time, but really intertwined together with this siman resh tzadichet in resh tzadizayin in Orach Chaim, whether or not a person could say bracha besamim on these besamim who were soaked and submerged in the wine of stam yinam. Says the Shulchan Aruch, nahagu levarech al hadas kol echad efshar. Lechatchila, if you have an option, the option should be to say besamim an hadasim. So therefore, at least the Sfaradim who follow the Shulchan Aruch, not like the Ramah that we just saw before, not like the Mishna Berura that we just saw before. Lechatchila, if you have an option, you should be saying the Havdalah on besamim of hadas, not on other besamim. And the Ramah says, "V'yesh omrim de'en levarech al hadas hayavesh." That those who say hadas that is already dried, you should not say bracha on it, because it doesn't smell really that much. Same is, other things that when they dry up, you can't smell anything. Rak al shar besamim, you say it on other things that are good smelling. That is the minhag in Ashkenaz. V'nir'eli diyesh lehaniach gam hadas ima besamim de'az osin kichula alma. Put some hadas also inside of it, even if it's dry, to cover this Shulchan Aruch. That, by the way, is the cause of some Ashkenazim saying the bracha besamim on a mixture, not just because of the Mishna Berura that we saw before, that their minhag is to say borei minei besamim, but also they want to be covering this, even though that in Europe it was not like Eretz Yisrael or in Los Angeles that you have hadasim growing throughout the entire course of the year. Back in Europe was difficult to get. In Ashkenaz, it was difficult to get hadas on a regular basis during the course of the year, and hence the minhag of the Ashkenazim. But again, according to the Sfaradim, especially if you have fresh hadasim available, that should be lechatchila the minhag. Says the Shulchan Aruch, one last Seif, if a person has lost their sense of smell, they're under the weather, they got COVID, whatever it is that they cannot smell well, they should try always, especially if you're a little under the weather, you want to try first the sense of smell. Last thing you want is to say bracha on besamim and then you cannot smell. That's not something you want to get into, and therefore, if you don't have your chush hareach, your sense of smell, you would skip the bracha of besamim, unless you want to be motzi other people. But again, it's better for them to say the bracha if they are bar hachi, and not for you to say it for them. Fine. So that is basically the conclusion of our Siman Resh Tzadizayin, and Imir Hashem, we will be continuing starting the next Siman in the days